Well, hello, welcome back to Life You Imagined. My name is Nico, and today we're going to be talking about the book, Why We Get Fat. So a few years ago, let me give you some context here. A few years ago, I gained some weight. I used to be pretty skinny in high school. I was very active at the time. I'm sure my metabolism was better because I was younger. But generally, yeah, I was pretty skinny. It was only in probably somewhere in my mid-20s that I noticed I started to gain a little bit of weight. I wasn't as active as I used to be, just getting older, a lot of things like that. And you could see it, in my chin, a little bit around my stomach, which here we go. You see that now? There we go. Otherwise, you couldn't have visualized that. I was starting to put on a few extra pounds, and in a few years, and probably in my late 20s, early 30s. And I actually went through a couple time up and down periods where I'd gain a little bit and I'd lose a little bit and gain a little bit and lose a little bit. But I did get to a point in which I was a little heavier. I don't think I was ever fully obese or fully fat necessarily. But I think I was getting close. I didn't feel good about who I was. I didn't feel good about how I looked. I was really embarrassed. It was a pretty big hit to my self-image, which already wasn't great. Especially looking back, I can really see kind of how I was at the time. It was not good. And on top of that, feeling like I was gross and disgusting and a fat blob if I'd go outside. And again, I'm exaggerating. This is hyperbolic at the moment, but that's how I felt. So yeah, I felt embarrassed going outside, and it showed in my behavior, it showed in how I carried myself in the world and all that kind of stuff. It was only a few years ago in which I finally decided to lose it. And that is a discussion that I want to have with you at some point in time, because I think it's worth talking about, because it might be something that you are dealing with too. So I want to get into the why I actually made the choice to do it at another point, because I think that's an important one to talk about with you. But I just want to talk about, once I did decide that I wanted to lose weight, I tried everything under the sun pretty much. I tried almost every diet I could think of. I tried every different exercise program. Often I would try them all at once, just as like a shotgun approach. I'm like, hopefully fucking something sticks to the goddamn wall to lose weight. I tried, my first thing, I think I went vegetarian, which was not that hard because I love vegetables and salads and stuff. That's not that very hard at all to me. But then I tried to step it up, and I read about some plant-based stuff. So I decided to go vegan for a while. I did that pretty I was going to say religiously, and I don't like using that word, but pretty strict, fairly strict, for about 6 months. I occasionally would give myself cheat meals where I get to have some, cheese or something, but mostly I was pretty on. Then I tried doing, read more about gluten-free stuff. Not that I had an allergy. I'm not trying to pretend I do, but started reading some things about the effects of the current strain of wheat that we have out right now, at least in the West, and how it affects the gut and this and this and that. So I was like, okay, cool. Well, I guess I'll do vegan and I'll do gluten-free. You might imagine it really kind of limited my options as what the fuck I can have. That was hard. That was really, really hard. I couldn't have bread. I couldn't have pastas or grains or anything. It's like, Jesus, what can I even eat at this point? Frozen broccoli. So I did that. I tried, I have an exercise bike, and I would do, 25 minutes on that, plus this, plus that, just this diet, that diet, and trying to work out. And I did eventually lose that weight. But I don't think it was a healthy way to lose the weight. Looking back now, I kind of starved myself of certain nutrients. So I don't think, again, it wasn't very healthy. I have some shots of me where I didn't have my shirt on. It was a performance. It was a show when I was on stage, and I look almost emaciated. I look very thin, like an unhealthy skinny. But hey, at least I lost the weight. I'm not saying that's the good way to do it. But after I got off of that whole situation and I had finally lost some of the weight, I'd already been trying a few things. I was getting sick of seeing all these different ideas out there and these different diets. about, do this. Like, there was obviously veganism. That's a big thing. Seems to be more of a cultural thing or an ideology than it does to be something based on nutrition and science, though. But I didn't know that at the time. And people have like juice cleanses, doing juice all the time. Maybe there's a documentary on a couple of them on Netflix, about this guy who does the juice cleanses. So I was like, well, maybe that, maybe this, maybe you do this, maybe you only eat these things. And I got really sick of not knowing what was actually scientifically based and what was not, and because there's so many competing opinions. So I set out on a sort of mini quest to understand, at least better as a layman, what actually happens in the body when we get fat. What actually is causing it? I wanted concrete scientific studies that were not biased, that were actually trying to focus on what the data actually says, because that's the kind of person I am. I'm not looking to do it from an ethical standpoint. To me, those things are secondary. And I'm not saying you can't do a diet based on ethics. That's fine, but know that you're doing that. I wanted it based on what is the most optimal thing for my body to function at peak performance, to be healthiest. That's what I wanted to know. And so initially what I found was this book, Good Calories, Bad Calories by Gary Taubes. And I was amazed at this book. I was, there's so much information and it's so thoroughly researched. This is probably one of the most researched books, especially in nutrition, that I've ever read. Like the bibliography, like the notes and all that stuff is like practically 100 pages in itself. This book, by the way, if you can see how thick this thing is, this is like 600 pages. 600 pages. And it's very dense and it's very technical and it's very scientific, because I think he really, first of all, set out to make the academic case for his research, for what he found out about health and nutrition based upon 200 years of scientific data about health and nutrition studies, that he basically went back and re-researched the data and pulled out, tried to do the most accurate things he could. So again, this blew my mind, but it was also a pain in the ass to get through. It was not fun. And this is what created this problem, because I was so into this book and I was so like, oh my God, this completely changed the way I thought about nutrition and how the body works and all from the chemical side and nutrition side, what's actually happening, what actually happens when we store fat and when we burn fat. But as you can see, the problem is you have this 600-page book that is really dense and it's not easy to read and it's not very fun. It's hard to recommend that to people, even though the information's amazing and the research is fucking top-notch. So, I wouldn't throw this at someone and say, hey, enjoy, boom. It's like, it's a better, I was about to say it's a better paperweight, but that's mean. That sounds like the book sucks. It doesn't suck. It's just hard to read. Thankfully, Gary Taubes knew this. He got a lot of comments about this and said, okay, this is great for academia. This is great for scientific papers to really back up your case. But what about the layman? What about the average person who just wants to start learning about the mechanisms of the body and what the fuck even happens? What's going on? Because there's so much damn nutrition advice out there and health advice, exercise advice. How do we know what's actually working? How do we know what's really valid and what actually gets the results we want to get with our bodies? And thankfully, he wrote a second book, which is basically this book, but in a much smaller form factor. And the best part here is that it's also a hell of a lot readable version. And that's what he took to heart. So he did, for us lay people, he wrote a book about nutrition, about how the body works and why we store fat and why we burn fat and how this whole process works. Therefore, how it relates to our diets and nutrition. It's not preachy in that way. It's more about here's the facts, here's what I've researched, here's his 200 years worth of studies, based on scientific data and all that, and explains it in a very simple, easy to understand way. And finally, I have a book that I can recommend to you, to some of my friends, my family, about nutrition. And to me, this is the most comprehensive, or at least that's the most comprehensive, but this is the most readable version of the most comprehensive book about what actually happens in the body. I mean, have you ever wondered how it even works? Why certain things have an effect? Because often you're told not to eat this and not to eat this because bad, but do you know why? Or do you know if that's accurate? And so much of the advice we have today about what equals a healthy diet, at least what we have in the West, the typical healthy Western diet, you know, the whole grains and all that shit, eating a lot of fiber, all that was built off of one study, one moment in time, with one particular research scientist who interpreted his data in one way because he was already expecting the results to be that way. All of it was, which sucks, because usually science is supposed to be self-correcting. It's not supposed to be about I'm right, you're wrong. It's supposed to be about what's the most accurate information we can gather, regardless of my opinion of it. But unfortunately, that influenced generations of people who now want to eat low fat, and they want to, you know, they're reducing salt, and they're reducing, you know, they'll still eat plenty of sugar for some reason, because apparently that's fine to them. I don't know. They're watching calories and doing step counters and all this fucking shit. But wouldn't it make more sense to do what's actually in line with how your body works? Give it the things that it needs to use, and don't give it the things that actually help it store fat? Seems like that would be the thing to do. So this book explains all that in a much more easy, just not even much more. It is. It's an easy read. It's an enjoyable read. It's fascinating. If you haven't read this stuff yet, if you haven't come across this information yet, and you're interested in nutrition and being healthy, or in losing weight and just feeling better in general, I'm hoping, I can't speak for you, this will actually blow your mind, because when I read the information in this, even in this dense version, I still was like, God, this is hard to get through, but fascinating. I've never had that combo of things before. Fascinating, but kind of boring, but fascinating. Fassa-boring. I don't know. Because often the advice we're given, if we want to lose weight, people will tell us, oh, it's easy. You just got to eat less, exercise more, right? You've heard that? Eat less, exercise more. That's what I thought too. Trying to restrict my diet, lower my, get lower calories because math. But apparently that's not how it fucking works. It's not as simple as eat less, exercise more. It's all about, like you can see in the title, there's specific types of things that affect your body in different ways. Some things help you store fat in your tissue. Some things help you burn fat. So understanding that is, to me, life-changing. And feeling good physically affects how you feel mentally and emotionally. It made a huge difference in my mood. And I don't know how much of this you've watched or read or know about me, but I've dealt with depression and anxiety for most of my life. Sometimes some very, very severe bouts. I've had moments where I've been suicidal. Luckily not recently, that's a couple years ago. But I've been there, that's almost a decade ago actually. So that's good. I've made a lot of progress. But one of the things that's really made a huge difference is treating my physical body better. Because guess what else is in your physical body? Your brain. What does your brain do? It actually helps generate your thoughts and your fucking emotions. So if that fucking whole system is out of whack, if you're unhealthy physically, you're going to feel it mentally. You're going to feel it emotionally. And that's often why I think some people go, well, okay, I get it. I want to feel better in general. I want to be happier in my life and not be so depressed or anxious or whatever. What the fuck does diet have to do with it? I don't care about exercising. I don't care about eating whatever handfuls of spinach or something that they think they're supposed to be doing. I don't care. I'm like, do you care about feeling good? Because if you do, I often recommend to a lot of people, it depends on, it's a case-by-case basis, of course, but people I talk to, start with your body. Start with the physical side, because that's going to have a huge spillover effect to you mentally and emotionally. You will absolutely notice the difference over time. You'll just feel a little bit better. You're going to be a little more focused. Your mood is going to lift. You're going to have better ideas, clearer thoughts. You might not be as emotionally reactive to things if you tend to act out with anger when things don't go your way, or frustration or depression. I'm not saying they're going to go away, because they're part of who you are, but it might be easier to deal with them. I mean, all these things come from simply just being healthier. And of course, if you do have a few extra pounds at the moment, like I used to, or even if you have more than a few extra pounds, losing that weight, you know how much that's going to add to your self-esteem. Actually, knowing that if you walk outside, you have clothes that fit you well, you look good, you feel better. You just feel better. You can say that that's shallow. You can say that that's superficial, which I used to, which is another excuse to keep myself from actually doing the work to lose the weight. Well, that's just fucking superficial. I'm not trying to like walk around and, to be fucking Mr. Cool Guy. Just knowing that you look better, you don't feel embarrassed. I mean, the increase to my self-esteem, or just general self-worth, self-image and all that, was huge. So, I mean, there's so many other reasons beyond just basic health to focus on your nutrition and to focus on your, on things like this, on exercise and all that kind of shit. So there's some pretty amazing things that, again, if you haven't read this stuff and you're into nutrition, I think you're going to be very interested in this. And I hope, like me, you'll have those mind-blowing moments. You're like, what the fuck? I thought it was the other way around. I thought this was the thing that was bad. And you're like, no, apparently not. Nope. There's also some pretty interesting stuff about how much exercise actually has to do with weight loss, which might not be as much as you think. So, but it has other great effects though. Absolutely recommended. This is one of the best books on nutrition I've ever read. I think this should be on everyone's shelf. I really do. This is one of those like essential reading kind of books. So please go pick this up. It's a very fucking fascinating read. You think you'll enjoy it. So cool, that's it. I have to go. I have stuff to do. I'm sure you do too. So thank you for watching. I do appreciate it. This is Life You Imagined. My name is Nico, and I will see you next time.
Hey, you want to be a better person? You want to live a better life? Sweet! Make sure you hit subscribe on Life You Imagined YouTube channel. Don't forget to hit that fucking notification bell so you're always up to date with all the newest offerings from Life You Imagined. Don't forget to go ahead and hit like on the video and share with all your friends. Leave a comment with all your fucking useless information, because I'm never going to read it. Oh, and make sure you go over to lifeyouimagine.com and check out everything I have over there. Look at me, buy my stuff, do everything I want you to do. Sales, marketing, promo. Buy my stuff, buy it. Look at me, pay attention to me and everything I do. I'm insecure.